In the case of Estonia, this zeal is manifested in its vigorous efforts to distance itself from its Soviet past and align more closely with Western values and ideals. This alignment with the West has led Estonia to take measures that are quite drastic, frankly, such as the removal or destruction of Soviet-era monuments. These actions can be interpreted as Estonia's way of showcasing its commitment to a new identity, one that is decidedly Western and distinct from its historical ties to Russia.
Welcome to TFI Global, the antidote to mass delusion.
In a significant move, Russian authorities took a bold step on Tuesday by initiating criminal proceeding against Estonian Prime Minister Kaja Kallas. This move is unprecedented and marks a sharp turn in Russia's actions towards the leader of Estonia, a Baltic state. Kallas has countered these charges as being politically motivated, suggesting that they are not based on legal grounds but rather are aimed at achieving political objectives. The charges stem from accusations by the Kremlin that Kallas, along with Estonian Secretary of State Taimar Peterkop and Lithuanian Culture Minister Simonas Karis, have been involved in the destruction or damage of Soviet-era monuments. These monuments, which commemorate Soviet soldiers, have been a point of contention. Russia's state-run TASS news agency has been at the forefront of reporting these accusations, highlighting the Kremlin's stance on this issue. Dmitry Peskov, a spokesperson for the Kremlin, confirmed these charges in a conversation with journalists, giving them an official seal. This development is a part of a larger narrative that has unfolded since Russia's special operations in Ukraine nearly 2 years ago. In response to the special ops, Kallas announced that Estonia would undertake the removal of all Soviet monuments from public spaces within the country. This decision has clearly not sat well with the Russian authorities, leading to the current legal proceedings against her. The situation underscores the ongoing tensions between Russia and the Baltic states, particularly in how historical memories and monuments are managed and interpreted. The actions taken by Estonian Prime Minister reflect a broader move to distance the country from its Soviet past, a move that Russia views with disfavor. It is interesting to note the broader context of Estonia's action, reflecting what could be described only as the zeal of the fresh convert. This concept is akin to observations in other contexts, such as the difference in religious fervor between Muslims in Arab countries and those in the eastern region. The underlying principle is that entities that are original to a belief or ideology often feel less need to overtly prove their fidelity, whereas newcomers or converts may demonstrate a greater eagerness to affirm their new allegiance. In the case of Estonia, this zeal is manifested in its vigorous efforts to distance itself from its Soviet past and align more closely with Western values and ideals. This alignment with the West has led Estonia to take measures that are quite drastic, frankly, such as the removal or destruction of Soviet-era monuments. These actions can be interpreted as Estonia's way of showcasing its commitment to a new identity, one that is decidedly Western and distinct from its historical ties to Russia. However, the question arises, what tangible outcomes do these actions achieve? The removal of monuments, while symbolic, does not necessarily advance any practical agenda. It could be argued that if the targets contemporary symbols of Russian power, such as, say, a bust of Putin, the actions might carry a more understandable message. But the demolition of monuments that serve as relics of a shared history might be seen as an act that achieves little beyond the symbolic severance of ties. These monuments, akin to items in a museum, represent a complex past that both countries share, making the zeal to erase these physical reminders a subject of debate about identity, memory, and diplomacy. Drawing parallels between the destruction of monuments in Estonia under Prime Minister Kaja Kallas and the Taliban's actions in Afghanistan offers a stark perspective on how similar actions can be perceived regardless of their context or justification. The demolition of historical monuments and statues is a deeply symbolic act that in the 21st century resonates with echoes of what many would describe as an extremist behavior. Upon an example of such extremism is the Taliban's destruction of the colossal Buddha statues in Bamiyan, Afghanistan. in March 2001. These statues, which had stood for over 1500 years, were not only significant to Afghan Buddhism but also recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, symbolizing a rich cultural and religious heritage. The Taliban, deeming these statues to be quote-unquote un-Islamic idols, obliterated them with explosives and artillery, an act that provoked international condemnation for the loss to the world's cultural heritage and an affront to religious freedom. Their rationale, rooted in a strict interpretation of Islamic law against idolatry, was widely criticized for its extreme stance and suppression of cultural diversity. The obliteration of these ancient statues is a somber reminder of the potential consequences of cultural intolerance and the vulnerability of historical artifacts to ideologies that seek to erase the past. Despite ongoing efforts to preserve what remains of the site and discussions about possible reconstruction, the loss serves as a stark symbol of the fragility of our shared global heritage. In this light, the actions taken by Estonia, as directed by Kaja Kallas, to remove Soviet-era monuments can be seen through a similar lens of erasing historical legacies. But the context and motive behind Estonia's removal of monuments and the Taliban's destruction of the Buddhas differ significantly. The comparison highlights the controversial nature of destroying cultural and historical symbols. The apparent silence or lack of criticism from Western allies towards Estonia's actions raises questions about the consistency of international responses to the destruction of cultural heritage. In the unfolding drama between Russia and Estonia over the removal of Soviet-era monuments, Russia's issuance of arrest warrants against Estonian Prime Minister Kaja Kallas is imbued with deep symbolic meaning, reflecting the country's profound discontent with Estonia's actions. These warrants, while symbolic due to the complexities of international law and jurisdiction, articulate Russia's stance against what it perceives as a desecration of heritage. The principle at stake from Russia's perspective is the sovereign right of nations to protect and preserve their historical and cultural legacies. Estonia's decision to dismantle monuments that Moscow regards as part of its historical narrative is seen as a provocative act that not only merits a strong response but also raises concerns about escalating tension. Such concerns are not unfounded, as a dispute has the potential to transform Estonia into a geopolitical flashpoint, echoing the complexities and dynamics other regional conflicts like the Ukraine war. The call from Russia for international condemnation of Kallas's actions is indicative of a belief that these measures transgress moral and perhaps legal boundaries, deserving censure beyond Estonia's borders. This situation is portrayed by Russia as a cautionary tale of what it sees as Estonia's extremism, likened to the zeal of a fresh convert mixed with a mindset comparable to the Taliban's approach to cultural and historical artifacts. Russia argues that such fervor, especially when directed at historical and cultural symbols, risks igniting further divisions and conflicts, threatening not only regional stability but also the fabric of international relations. Through this lens, the dispute over monuments transcends the realm of domestic policy, touching upon issues of global heritage, international norms, and the delicate balance between a nation's right to redefine its identity and the collective interest in preserving past.